So, I think we all know why we're here today. My name is Myrisa Christy, and I work for the Kentucky Center for Ag and Rural Development. And we also have Cara Stewart here with us. She works with us as well. And we are together, I guess, make up the grant team at KCARD currently. So, what we want to give you a heads up on today is working on this local meat capacity grant program. And this is just a basic overview. And I really am trying to cram everything that could possibly trip you up into an hour. So we'll see how that goes. And feel free to well, don't raise your hand because I'm presenting, so I won't see it, but type a question in the chat or come off mute. And this recording will be available later. So, and we'll stop recording after we're done. So here's the goals for today, just to understand how to get started, what your first steps are, to determine any eligible cost, and then to review some basic parts of the application and how they're scored. Um, Looking at there's a couple of things I really hope that everyone looks at, and one of them that I hope you print out. And go to the website. Cara, if you can drop those website links into the chat, the main website, because it has, the RFA or the request for applications, and it has fact sheets, it has resources. It also has the templates that you're going to need to use for the narratives. It has your match letter commitment and your letter of critical infrastructure. This sounds crazy, but you have to put in a letter to say that we can do what we say we do. The second one is what I want you to print out, and no one wants to print this out and read it, but that you can't request for applications. Fortunately, this one is only 30 pages long. The reason that I want you to print this out is twofold. One, there's a lot of places in here that can help you answer questions. And if you ask Cara or I a question, we may refer to it and say, like, hey, the answer's on this page, and if you want to read it, like quote it, and then you can see it. The other reason is that even with my more experienced, and I'm talking larger than KCARD multi-million-dollar nonprofits, they did not follow. This is an agricultural marketing service grant, and they did not follow the instructions on where to attach their letters of support, which is in, like, it tells you exactly how to upload each thing they ask for into grants.gov. And if you don't do it right, you could be ineligible. Oddly, your letters of support are uploaded on the SF424 box number 15, but this will outline that for you, and it will help you. Like, I literally print these out. I've been submitting AMS grants for 10 years. And I literally print this out and follow those instructions every single time. And the scoring criteria is in it. It's a great tool. Please look at it, print it out, have it by your side. If you're having trouble going to sleep, I recommend it for reading, highlight it, and maybe revisit it the next morning. So here's the basic overview. It comes from the Agricultural Marketing Service. The templates are very much Ag Marketing Service templates, the requirements, the forms. It is due just a minute before midnight on July the 19th. So that's fun. And I love when they make it midnight so that I can help people until 11 o'clock Eastern time. I'm hoping we'll all be done by 5 p.m., but I know things happen. It has to be submitted on grants.gov. This cannot be emailed, faxed, or sent in any other way to Agricultural Marketing Service. Broadly, the funds are for modernizing, increasing, diversifying, and decentralizing meat and poultry processing capacity. One of the things is if you are one of the 4 largest meat processors in the nation, you're not eligible, which I don't think applies to anyone who would be watching this webinar. They are prioritizing any applications that meet the needs of underserved producers, small farms, beginning farms, veterans, or underserved communities. So that's something to keep in mind, is if you know that you're working with a farmer that meets some of those, having a letter of support from them would be great. And they do encourage producer or farmer letters of support. I wouldn't want to flood them with them, but I think up to 10 is perfectly acceptable. So there's 2 application types: simplified equipment only, which is for that piece of equipment you just wish you had or you need to upgrade. There's no match on this. I envision this is the easiest way to get money from AMS that we've ever seen. And from 10,000 to 250,000, you cannot do anything to your facility with this money. You can do it with your own money, but you can't do it with this money. And I've already thought that somebody may be like, well, but I also need to upgrade my electrical, my plumbing, move this wall. And you're your piece of equipment costs $100,000 and it's going to cost you another 10 to move the wall. Well, if you work your match out, if you go for the other one, which can go, move a wall, then you have to have match. So it's a matter of like, is it going to cost you more in, putting in the electrical and moving the wall, or is it going to cost you more to have match and fill out a more complicated grant? But it probably have, I think they'll have closer scrutiny on the processing expansion projects. There's things on there about financial viability. You're going to have to talk about a lot of those types of things in the application. So I am actually going to put in a plug for KCARD here and say, we're happy to help you with these things, from getting registered with sam.gov to I can't figure out how to upload my application and can you review my application. Cara and I, over the next couple of weeks, will be working out some office hours and time where people can just, be, we know if we call it this time, or maybe even have an open Zoom room for people to hop in and ask questions or do phone calls. I think that will hopefully help, and we'll set a deadline, a week or two before the grant, that if you want your application reviewed, we'll be happy to help you with that. And I would say ideally we would get those beforehand. Those of you who've worked with us before know that I set poor boundaries, and so we will likely review them pretty close to the deadline, even to make sure that you're all right. Cara, unfortunately, is permanently on the Myrisa Setting Poor Boundaries train with me. So Cara, I think you've just dropped those links. If you haven't worked with KCARD before, or if you just want to get in touch with us real quick, you can fill out that contact form on that website. And we have a federal grant registration guide webpage. The other option is the Meat and Poultry Processing Capacity Technical Assistance Program, which is a technical assistance service that AMS funded to help people get grant ready. So that's another free option. And I don't think there's anything wrong with using both options, because they're probably serving far more meat processors than we are, and they may have more questions and answers to those questions than we have had so far. So with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to Cara, and Cara, I will maintain the clicking of the slides for you.
Thank you.
And we'll go from there.
Thanks, Myrisa. So as Myrisa said, I work with KCARD as well. Officially, my title is Grant Facilitator, which means I help you go through all of the ugly government stuff that nobody likes to do, that you have to do, and can be extremely confusing. So click us through, I think, a couple slides here, Myrisa. Okay, so our first step is to register with sam.gov. We want you to do this first and foremost, because that has to be done before you can get onto grants.gov, because you have to get your UEI number, which is specifically for federal financing, federal aid. These are things you could do now and have your UEI number, everything ready, so that when you're ready to get into grants.gov, you're ready to go. So what we're going to do is go ahead and walk you through with some snapshots of some screens to help you make sure you know where you're walking through if you have never registered for sam.gov. So here, make sure it's sam.gov. This is what it's going to look like. Do not Google it and click on the first link. This does not cost you anything. If they ask for something, as far as financial information, this is not sam.gov. So if you look up in the top of this screenshot on the background, it'll say sam.gov/content. So make sure that's where you're at. It's going to upload this. You're going to want to click that X, because this is going to be a pop-up screen right off the bat. After we do that, it's going to take us to this screen. You're going to go to, actually in the upper right hand corner of the screen behind that pop-up, it's going to say log in. You're going to go to login.gov and create an account if you do not have one already. These are all connected via an email address. So if you think you may have a sam.gov account, try your most used email address, or what you would associate with your business. and then hit forgot password, and it will try to find it for you. If not, just go ahead and create one. So you're going to throw your email address in. You're going to click English as default if you would like, and then rules of use, click that button at the bottom. The next step, once you've created your account, which it's going to ask you to create a password and verify a couple of different ways that we like to do these days. You may have to put in a phone number to get a verification code. Once you do that, it's going to take you, you now have a login for sam.gov, but you need to create your profile. That's what's going to give you your UEI number. So it's going to take you to your workspace, which looks like this, and it'll say workspace at the top. At the bottom of this picture, which I always try to zoom down on and it doesn't let me, there's a little green button that says register your entity or get a unique entity ID. And there's a green little button down there that you just click, and that will take you to the next page. This is what you want, your UEI number. You will walk through and complete your profile, which will have things like your address, your all of the additional things on there as far as let's see, address, phone number. It's going to make sure that you're in the county that you say you're in, so you have to, it's like a typical profile setup, you know, where are you doing business and can you prove that you're doing business there? You're going to want to click on terms of service that agree with the sam.gov user account, and then you can go to the next page. Now, once it says you are who you are, you're going to want to answer a few questions. It wants to know, why do you need a UEI? So it's going to ask what your goal is. And it'll say, I want to do business with, and it's going to give you several options there. You want to choose federal government. You're going to do business directly with the federal government. All the others are kind of confusing. That's why I was just like, you choose this one. Then it's going to open another box up and say, select the answer for this best fits your intentions. Here again, it's going to give you several options. You're going to want to choose federal financial assistance. The only reason you're getting a UEI in this case is to apply for federal funding from the U.S. government. And there are other several options on that page. Who is requiring you to do this? That's going to be the federal government again. Choose that option. You're going to choose the option financial assistance. And then the next three questions that it's going to ask you is basic questions, and you should know the answer to, but in case it's confusing, you are not a government entity, so click no. You are not applying for assistance from the Department of Defense, click no. And your business is located in the U.S., click yes. Then it's going to pop up this and say, you'll be registering the following. It's going to give you your entity name, the business or organization, purpose of the registration, make sure that that says financial assistance. So it's just making sure that you have listed what you want and that they are correct in moving forward. Now, there is a place to download a guide for registration. And you can just down that little sheet, and it's kind of like the assistance sheet that Myrisa was talking about a few minutes ago. It's just making sure that you have everything in line to finish up your registration. It's going to bring you to this next screen, prepare your data. One of the things that you're going to need when you do this is date of incorporation. So it's going to ask you for certain items, and it lists them there in that sheet. If you downloaded it, the download guide there, it gives you that again. It's going to ask you for your address. It's going to ask you for, can you provide proof that your business is where you say it is? They may ask you to upload some sort of ID, some sort of mailing, maybe utility bill. But if it finds you first off, it's going to recognize the information that you put in, and it's going to make it a lot easier. So next slide there, Myrisa. Okay, so I've made up a service here so that we could walk through, because it's hard to go through these screenshots without actually filling something out. And if you don't fill stuff out, it doesn't let you go to the next screen. So I entered in a legal business name that is no longer in existence, but it was at one time. So you're going to that's where you fill out that information there again, the entity that you're looking for. Whoops. Myrisa.
Wow,
So
whoops.
hold on. So you're going to enter the entity that you're looking for and the address again. And let's see. Slide 16, Myrisa.
I think I'm on slide 16. Is that not? Oh, I
Yep,
know
there
why.
you go. You switch screens.
Yeah, you got to, Myrisa, not paying
Okay.
attention.
That's fine. So you're going to enter the physical address. Make sure that you have the start year. That's kind of the other thing I was talking about. The year was incorporated. The easiest way to find this, if you just don't automatically know, is you can go to the Secretary of State. If you're registered with the Secretary of State as a business, it will tell you on your registration when you were first registered or first organized. So that's really helpful. I actually had to do that for this entity because I was not sure. So then you're going to walk through this, make sure you click all the little check boxes. It's going to say, I can provide official documentation if necessary. That's where I said, if it may ask you to come back with some stuff like a valid ID or something with that name and that address in it. All right, Myrisa.
Sorry, I was trying to get the link that I wanted to stick in there, and you can't, since I'm sharing my second screen, I can't get to it.
Yeah. So then it's going to review your information. So it's going to give you, here's who we think you're looking for. Do any of these match? Nope, you did it again. Thanks. Do any of these match? And so if you see there at the top, it's a little hard to read, but it says, I recognize an entity on this list, or I don't. I clicked yes, I did. You can't see it by what I screenshotted, but Stewart's Electric Service with the right address was listed there. So I clicked the little button beside it. It pulls it up and it says you are requesting a UEI for this valid entity. And that's all it really takes. The next screen, if you can prove this is you, ta-da, you get a UEI. This is the number that you're looking for. Now, if you don't automatically get this, if for some reason you have to provide additional information, all it's going to do is link that up and verify it. That's why we say it could take 2 days to 10 days, because the government is not always quick in responding to some of this stuff. But this eventually is what you're looking for. You will get an email at that email address that you provided, either saying we need more information or congratulations, here's your UEI. If you don't receive something by 10 days, let us know and I'll happy to help and try to walk through this one-on-one. We can do it in individual Zoom. So
Anne asked, if you start this process and can't finish it, does it save what you already have? Once you choose your entity, Anne, I think at that point you can prove it's yours, you're saved from there. The thing that I was trying to paste in was they have a guide for documents to help you verify who you are. And
I can do that. I'll
can you
find it.
paste that in and stick it in the chat? It was in the presentation notes. I was just trying to get to it. I thought I'd be able to get it off the notes screen that I can see here, but no, you can't copy the things on your notes screen. So,
You're good.
but I think like, and if you get your role and you identify your entity and you have validating it, and Cara, you can correct me if I'm wrong because I'm frequently wrong. I don't think there's a lot to do until you choose and try to validate your entity. I don't think it saves between you've created your role and validating. Like,
Right.
so if you go through and answer the questions, well, so the points of contact and all that core data, it's going to save that as you go. But so yes and
If you
no.
start the if you start the validation process where you say, I want you to look for Stewart's electric service, you start that process, and literally it's like 4 or 5 screens that you quickly click through. It's not going to save that part. You're going to have to go back and put in the year of incorporation if it asks for the information again. So it won't save that part, but it's not that many things to fill in. It will save your login information, your workspace, all of that's already saved in there. And it'll save your searches if you want to go back and search for an entity or a business, basically. Excuse me. But once you start that process, you'll have to start it over again as far as the validation.
Yeah. Once you choose your entity and you start like entering your points of contact and all the stuff that it's going to ask you for after that, it saves on that part. The big thing is getting it to where you get your entity and you get it. Once you're connected to your entity, it saves.
Right. Exactly. And honestly, I did this yesterday. It took me no more than 30 minutes to do all of this and walk all the way through. And that was with me actually and stopping and redoing it again because I had to go look up my year of incorporation.
Yeah, it's good that list of documents, especially if you think you're going to have difficulties, like your entity address is weird or different, that list of documents can come in very handy. But articles of incorporation, certain like recently filed tax forms for 2022. Yeah, 2022 is last year. So those things come in pretty handy. So the other thing that we're going to look at is this has to be submitted via grants.gov. I'm not going to do as in-depth on this, but I'm going to do on getting registered with grants.gov because it's not quite as tricky as sam.gov. And honestly, most of the time we can get a grants.gov set up in less than 5 days. It's usually the same day. Sam.gov is a whole different because the sam.gov validates it with the IRS and like does a web search on its own for your Secretary of State information, all that kind of stuff. So grants.gov is not as bad. There's a user guide for grants.gov and the registration guide for grants.gov. I think Cara just dropped those in the chat. So here's the thing. Once you are set up with grants.gov, you need to go in there. You can see on the screen, like halfway down on the left side, you can see what I searched for. I went in there and searched for local meat capacity because you could search, like if you want to find the CDFA number and search that way, or you could just type in the grant name. You're going to click on that nice blue link right there. And you've got a couple of buttons where you hit apply, and then you have to choose a title for your grant. I recommend something simple, less than 150 characters, like 15 words or 150 characters, somewhere around there. And you're going to get this screen. The reason I'm showing people this is if you haven't applied using grants.gov before, that upload button there doesn't upload crap to your application. You're going to actually need to fill out all 4 of those. There are detailed instructions on how to fill those out in the RFA. Can't remember exactly what page it starts on. I think it's around page 12. Not yet. But it is in there. And it's page 15, sorry, about how to fill out. And it will literally tell you what to put in every box on the SF424. And it will tell you what to put on every box, like how to fill out the project abstract summary. It will tell you how to attach your narrative form, which by the way, has to be in a Word document and attached as a PDF, and your budget information for non-construction programs. Because even if you're moving a wall, this is not considered construction because you're not expanding the footprint. There are some legal reasons that the USDA didn't want to use this money to expand the footprints of your facilities. So anyway, I just wanted to show you that. And once you have your sam.gov and your UEI, the check application for errors and you sign and submit, I really recommend submitting at least 24 hours before. I'm going to be honest with you, I don't even follow my own rule on that. I wish I did. I try sometimes. There's been days. One time I accidentally submitted one 2 weeks before because as it turns out the deadline was extended by 2 weeks. But all right. Processing. So I'm going to break down into the 2 different kinds of projects. You all probably have an understanding of this if you're interested in here today. And some of you may already have sam.gov. The reason we spent so much time with sam.gov is because in the last year and a half, it's changed. And even if you had used to, you had the DUNS number and the cage code and expiration date. Now they're looking for the UEI and an expiration date, which is different. And it's good because you don't have to go through Duns anymore. He's constantly trying to sell you something for your business credit. So I'm glad the federal government is bringing it all in-house, so it's less confusing, but it's not a fun transition. So even if you've had a SAM.gov, you need to go check on it today. Um, the processing expansion grants require a dollar for dollar non-federal match unless you're working with one of their user classes like like historically underserved, small and beginning farmers, veterans. If you're a woman-owned business, some of those things you can get by with a 25% match, and it can be in kind. They're up to 36 months long. You have to stay on that existing building footprint. I'm going to say that like a million times. So there are some examples. I would say that a lot of, especially in light of some other things, a lot of people in the industry can be put off by the use of the word climate smart. But in this case, you can think like, I really need to do something more efficient for my plant that's going to save me money, and that's considered climate smart. So just keep that in mind. It will also pay for employee training and staff cost associated with the project. The one that I see being way more accessible once you make it through grants.gov is the simplified equipment only grant up to $250,000 up to 24 months. Nothing other than equipment. Attach quotes or bids or something, somehow how you got the money or how you came up with the amount. Don't just say, I think this thing will cost $50,000 on your budget. You need to actually give some justification for where you got those numbers. So before I head over to this slide, I actually have a plan. This is the reason I shared my screen earlier, the screen instead of just the slides. I want to go through the applications kind of quickly. This is the simplified equipment only application. Pretty straightforward filling it out. I will say that I would do two different people for the authorized organization representative and the project coordinator, and it actually mentions that on there. There's some reasons with reporting for AMS that you want two different people, because the AOR will communicate differently with the agency potentially than the project director. And it also gives you a fallback if somebody messes up their login. And I've seen that happen with the AMS grant, or they use Grant Solutions now, which looks super spammy. If any of you guys did the MPERG or however you pronounce that acronym, it looks really spammy. And if you did the MPERG, you actually probably still need to redo your SAM.gov, I'm sorry, or at least log in and update it. So your current inspection status. So, one of the things that we talked about is that it can't be a new plant that is never operated. It can be a plant that is not currently USDA or state inspected, but you have to plan to be inspected by the end of the grant period. Did I say that right, Cara? Okay, cool. What you're slaughtering. They are actually allowing rendering plants in this. I don't think anybody on the call is doing rendering. Simple, or like estimate your best guesses there on current capacity and your business operations. So describe your geographic focus area, and that means where you're serving, and where you're serving from a farmer standpoint and where you're serving from a distribution standpoint, like where you're selling your stuff if you're selling it. Business relationships with local producers, market outlets, and more. Be very specific about this. Don't be super, like don't tie yourself too tightly, but be pretty specific. They want to know where you're serving, and they want to know what communities you're serving, where you're selling, all of those sorts of things. Project title, 15 words or less. This will need to match your SF 424, which is on the grants.gov. Your abstract summary, which will then again be used in that project abstract form. I know they're asking for it twice. It's repetitive. It's because they're going to give the reviewers this to read. They're going to give the reviewers everything, but they're going to give the reviewers this to read as a completed thing. Background information. This is really, one of the main scoring areas in this for the simplified, like 80 of your points is alignment intent. And this is where background information and your project beneficiaries is where you get to say, like, here's my need. Like, here's not just my need as a meat processor, but this is fulfilling a specific need that we have in our community. And this is who it's going to serve. And your community is your farmers and your eaters, which is everybody. So for project objectives, they have 4 listed there. Those of you who have worked with me before, I know that somewhere, but know that like 3 is the most objectives I usually like. I've done 4. The more objectives you have, the more you have to report on. So if you need like 2 pieces of equipment to accomplish an objective, like you're going to do sausage and for some you haven't done sausage before, let's pretend, and you need 2 pieces. Yeah. Somebody got a question? No. Okay. No. Yes. Marlon? Okay. I just saw you all of a sudden. So, you know, keep your objectives simple. Your tasks are all going to be about purchasing and installing equipment in this case. Your key staff, their relevant experience. Like if you own and operated a meat processing facility for 20 years, you need to have more than, you know, Jane Doe owns and has operated a meat processing facility for 20 years. Describe yourself a little better. This is scored. So, make sure you let them know that the people doing the project are capable of doing and implementing the project. Outcome indicators, don't check more of these than you have to. That NA, that not applicable box there, is there for a reason. Budget narrative. Budget narrative here is super simple. What pieces of equipment are you getting? How much are they going to cost? And you can attach, the justification. What they're wanting here is to make sure that you're getting it from a commercial source, which means that you're not getting a used piece of equipment at the discount, and that's what the grant funds are going to. They want you to have a commercial source of equipment, from my understanding of reading the RFA. Now, used equipment from a dealer may be different, but I think they're wanting mostly new. So I will go over the scoring of this application in a minute, but for now, I'm going to switch over to the project expansion application, which is far more robust. The first parts are generally the same. Um, they actually require you, if you have a USDA facility and established identifier, which most of you, I believe, do, then you need to put that in there. And it starts differing a little bit. The scoring on this is far tougher, and there's more writing involved. And you notice here they have project activities that you can choose from. Choose the ones that make sense to you and that you can tie to your objectives. And just like before, this is your project background. This is, how are you structured? Who are you serving? The history of the operations. Um, we'll go over the scoring criteria here in a little minute. And then your beneficiaries. These 2 are really important as far as the writing goes. I mean, just this is where you want to put your effort on showing why there's a need for what you're doing and who's going to benefit. And the benefit should probably be farmers. And people are able to access. The point of this is to really decentralize meat processing so that we're not stuck with a limited number of large processors across the country. Everybody still has bad memories. Here's your objectives. If you're going to do a couple of things here, if you're going to, buy a smoker and all these things, think about the categories of product or species you're producing or processing and group those into your objectives. You don't have to make every single equipment purchase or modification its own objective. You want to say, we're going to be able at the end of the project to process X head more poultry into pieces rather than whole birds, right? That's an objective. That's going to require more than one thing likely to go on at your facility. Your work plan, here's your task. You can add rows. If you're doing the poultry, maybe you need different poultry processing equipment. You need worker training that's eligible to further process poultry. You need different packaging equipment for I don't, not necessarily, but think about that. Staff experience, again, do not ignore this part. Outcome indicators, don't click more than you have to. Your personnel. So the interesting thing, and somebody asked me, like, where does the matching funds, do they have to be equally distributed among all the different categories? And no, they don't. Like if you had in-kind match and you were doing in-kind match and you were valuing your own time supervising and implementing the project as in-kind, all of your matching funds are going to go in personnel, right? I mean, that's where the matching funds are going to go. And you can see down here on budget justification, like if you're doing that, you're going to say, Jane Doe, whose time is worth $35 an hour based on the Bureau of Labor Statistics rate for a facilities operator, and that's below probably what the BLS would have, is going to spend at least, this many hours getting equipment quotes and just arranging for training, hiring new staff, doing all these things that are going to have to go on to like offer poultry into pieces instead of whole birds. So you would enter that there. We can help you find that BLS data, if Bureau of Labor Statistics data, if you need it. And you would actually put the person's name and title there. And if you have more than 3, that's fine too. Fringe benefits, a lot of times I want you to put a rate, like it cost us an extra 20% above that person's paycheck to employ them. That can include vacation, health insurance, all those sorts of things. Travel, any trips. This is where I think the training or any of those sort of trips can come in. Equipment, kind of self-explanatory again. Try to have a justification, not this equipment costs $50,000 just because you think they usually cost about $50,000. And the other thing to keep in mind is if prices and things change a little bit, you have some wiggle room with the AMS on your budget. The thing you can't do is add something to the budget you didn't have in there before. As far as like, well, we were going to process poultry, but on second thought, we'd like to process goats. That's not the same thing. So keep that in mind. Oh, but on second thought, I want a smoker. No. You gotta, if you think you're gonna do it, make sure it's in the budget. They might let you make a big change, but I wouldn't guarantee it. I would rather just go with what you think you need. Any contractors and consultants actually working on a HACCP plan is an eligible expense here. So that's where you might have a contractor or consultant or someone to install things. The other category, I try to use this pretty sparingly. Indirect cost. So excited to see a project, a grant that individual farmers and business owners can apply to that has, or ag business owners has an indirect cost rate. And so what that is assuming that you haven't spent all the $5 million of this grant program already, that indirect cost rate is 10% of your personnel, your salary, your travel and supply. I think supply costs. It's called the modified total indirect cost rate. And again, it's covered in that RFA. Under the budget section, and you can add 10% of the total of those costs, and you don't justify it at all. That's just, they assume that it's going to cost you 10% more just to do the project. We don't see this in federal grants to small businesses very often, so I'm happy to see it. And of course, all of these tables roll back up to that first table, which was the overall budget. You can see some definitions. Limited resource, that's a self-determination tool if you're serving limited resource farmers. I live in Madison County now, so I went to see what would make me qualify as a limited resource yesterday. And as it turns out, my household income would have to be less than $29,000, and my gross farm revenue would have to be less than about $220,000. So because each county has its different numbers for those things based on the county's overall household income and farm revenue. So if you have some farmers that you think may qualify for that, helping them write a letter of support, the fact that it would help them is good. A beginning farmer rancher is defined as anyone who has not filed a Schedule F. in 10 years. Like one of those years they didn't file a Schedule F. Socially disadvantaged for this program does not include women. For underserved, AMS doesn't include women. And um, veteran farmer rancher, that's self-explanatory. Now, though, if you look at the women-owned small business, I think everyone on this call would qualify as a small business by the SBA definitions. I don't think anyone has, but you can click here once you download this template and see those definitions. And oh, here it is. Actually, I've got it here. So if you have over 1,000 employees, you're not a small business. So most people on this call, to my knowledge, are under that. So those are the applications. I'm going to go ahead and close those out and get back to the slideshow. And supporting documents, letters of support from producers, they don't usually let you include these on AMS, but I think they want to see that farmers need what you're saying, the improvements that you say you need to from your plant. And that's super important. So if they did not provide a template for a letter of support, which usually AMS does, if you need a template, I will find one and send it to you. I would say that if you're getting letters of support from farmers, that you would want to help them write it and try to make sure they put it on a letterhead and then get it to them in time that they can actually sign it and then take a picture with their phone instead of doing a font digital signature. Actual signed ones on letterhead are AMS's favorite. Evidence of critical infrastructure. That's a letter that shows that you actually have the beef processing facilities and can do it. You have a building, you have all the things that make it possible, the backbone support that make it possible to do this, and a match letter. If you're doing the processing expansion, you're going to need a match letter. And you actually don't, like, if you're used to rural development, if any of you guys have used rural development funding, they show bank statement, everything. No, you write a letter and say, yeah, I got the match. If you're doing in-kind, so if you have in-kind and cash, you would actually need 2 letters, and we can go over that with you.
Marissa,
Yes.
Jack actually has a question.
Yeah.
Is it okay if the background information and the beneficiaries to be a little bit repetitive?
Yeah. A little bit, yes. I think you want to look at the questions but yeah, it's going to be repetitive. Honestly, I think of writing a grant as like trying to market to someone. The more times you can tell them exactly what you're doing, the better the chances they're going to understand it. And my other tip on writing anything for AMS is to use the words they use. So look at the news release for when they announced this program. What words did they use? Look at, so don't say like rural low income farmers, you know, farmers who are underserved and lived in a distressed community. It's 2 different sets of words. One of them is specifically speaks to the thing. And if you want some help with those words, get us your right. And don't wait. Another thing, don't wait until you have you have the perfect application to send it to us. Send it to us when you get something on paper and you want some help. Like we can say like, here, you could expand more on this, or you could clarify that. Like this would make it clear for reviewers. Because quite honestly, in a lot of ways, when we're getting 5 or 10 applications to review, we're functioning a lot like pre-reviewers. And if I can't sort out easily what you're doing, and I can give you some tips to like make it easier for reviewers, because we're kind of already, my brain is not any smarter than the people who review these grants. So if I can't hold your project in, I can sit down and take some time and be like, all right, how can we make this clearer? Because all of us, myself included, when I write grants, I'm writing a project that I know, understand, and love. And because I know it, understand it, and love it, I don't explain it as clearly as someone who's never heard of it before. Now, these equipment ones, I'm hoping those are pretty straightforward, but if you want a lot of points. So speaking of points, scoring criteria. That is also in the RFA that starts on page 22. And they have a better explanation. But alignment intent, this is one of those, like, using their words helps you because it shows that you're aligned. Like, we're serving these things, we're doing these things. Like the background, when they talk about need, like our need is to have the things that you mentioned in the RFA under the purpose or examples. Use some of the words they used in those. Technical merit, does it work? Achievability, can this organization do it? And is it possible? Can they actually increase the number of birds that they're chopping into pieces? And my language is great this morning. But expertise in technical management, this is why you do not ignore that project personnel, the key personnel question. It's 15 points. Fiscal plan, financial viability, and resources. So you're going to have to, when you talk about your background as a process, you're going to have to talk about the fact that this thing is going to work, and it does work. If you happen to have, and Cara, I actually did not check if there was a page limit on these puppies. Just realized that. Usually AMS says you can
Let
add
me look.
14 pages from the template. It's their usual rule, but it may be less pages for this. Anything, so you're being scored on that. And if you all will forgive me, I closed my Word document. Sorry, never mind. We can look at a great place to put that application. I think that's where you go into your background. In your background, talk about your fiscal plan and financial viability. Market impact and opportunities, that's your beneficiaries and who you're serving, and also your background. And your community impact and support. And that is definitely, like, you see that's 10 points. I figure each one of those points is a letter from a farmer. I mean, it's not going to translate directly that way, but it's not going to hurt. I will say that political letters are discouraged from AMS. Don't get political letters. We really tell people in general, unless you're applying, there's certain programs, but in USDA, I wouldn't do a political letter. For the scoring criteria for the simplified equipment only, well, alignment intent, repeat their words, make sure they know that you're doing something they want. The big thing is making sure the objectives that you put down meet the needs that you're describing in the background part for both applications, and estimate the number of producers. And actually, part of this score is that you followed the instructions. That's why I say print the instructions out. The RFA is literally instructions. It's just a lot of them. I recommend reading in pieces that are relevant to you at the time. The budget relates to what you're doing. That's pretty easy. Your equipment should relate to your objectives. Market impact and opportunities, meeting consumer needs, meeting the market needs. So that's, I think that is it. Thank you. There's our general contact information. If you email that or call that number, we generally try to get back to you in 24 to 48 hours, hopefully over the weekends are the exception. I will let you know that I will actually be out of the office the entire week next week, and for the first time in 10 years, I'm endeavoring not to take my laptop with me. So yeah, it's going to be exciting. So go ahead, you can email us.
Congratulations and good luck.
I'm not taking it, man. I'm not taking it. I'm driving myself crazy this week trying to get everything done. But we'll stop our recording here, and feel free to reach out to us, KCARD at kcard.info. You can also find Cara and I's emails on our website and KCARD phone numbers. And also we have someone on board, a couple of people on board that I have a lot of experience working with meat processors on the business end of things. So from business planning guides, business planning. So if you have those questions or want to look at, if you're doing a larger one, you want to do a financial, look at some financials or something, we could help you with that. But if you want that help, we're going to have to start really soon.